Having a good time out here in LA at Expoverse. We got a great panel coming up next. We're going to be talking about, we've got Matthew, Alex, and Michael. They are getting mic'd up, so they'll be up here in a second. But the panel is going to be about best practices for creators and brands in the new creative economy. Now, what's really cool about all of this is that, you know, whether you're in NFTs, the metaverse, Web3, it doesn't matter. It's all brand new. We're building. So the fact that, you know, creators and brands are all getting into here. I mean, how many times are you seeing now, you know, this Fortune 500 company has filed a patent to get into the metaverse? Well, it doesn't really mean that they're going to be in the metaverse. Like ExxonMobil is in the metaverse. You're not going to go get gasoline in the metaverse. That's insane. But what they're doing is creating the ability for their brand to market products in the real world. So there's a really good strategy. I think that this is a big thing that's coming up, you know, within this whole creator economy that is, you know, Web3. It's very exciting. So we're going to be talking with Matthew. He's the product lead of Upland. That is a big metaverse. Alex, the CEO of RE NFT Marketplace. And then Michael, who's the technology director of Game of Silks. Now, if you did notice, the Silks, they've got a big booth. I don't know if RE or Upland where their booths are, but I know that, you know, make sure that you guys do, after you hear them speak, and when you really like what they're saying, like, you should go pop over by the booth, chat with them, learn a little bit more. Don't forget to stop and talk to people in their booths along the way, because, you know, this is all like new technology. This is all brand new stuff that's happening. And whether this is your first conference or your 15th conference, it doesn't matter. You know, I've been in crypto and all this for years, but there's still something new we're learning every single day, so it's very exciting. Guys, are you mic'd up and ready to roll? All right, here we go. Here come the gentlemen, and we're going to be talking about creators and brands in this new creative economy and their best practices, because a lot of money to be made, so if you're doing it right, you're going to do it right. Gentlemen, thank you very much. The stage is yours.
All right, let's do it.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Rushing. Yes.
All right, ooh, these lights are bright. How's everybody doing today? We are waiting on one person. She may join us. I think she's coming in now, so she told me she just got here. Yeah, so we'll see. But we're going to go ahead and get started anyways. Thank you guys all for joining us today. My name is Matt. As the MC mentioned, I am a product lead at Upland, one of the largest metaverses out there. I've been working in blockchain for about 5 years now. And it's been an amazing journey. It's been awesome. It's been tremendous working at Upland and being in the space, obviously with everything driven by NFTs and real economies. Alex, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Awesome, definitely, thank you. So I'm Alex Rodriguez, founder and CEO of ReSwap. We're a Celo-native NFT marketplace focused on tokenizing digital assets, especially digital art and physical art in the physical world. Been in the creator economy for over 20 years, but in the Web 2 side. So just joining the Web 3 side about a year and a half ago. And we did launch in the Celo ecosystem. So super excited to be here and talk about best practices on the creator economy and what to do and how to grow your communities. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, my name is Michael Lira. I'm here representing Silks. We're basically building a metaverse that's based on real live data coming in for thoroughbreds. So it's a sort of a fantasy play to earn type game. But we're rolling that out in the next 6 months.
Awesome. So our topic today is best practices for creators and brands in the new creative economy. So I guess my first question is kind of, you know, what is that? I think we say a lot of words in this space sometimes, but it's not always clear what that actually means to people. So in your eyes, what is the new creative economy?
So one of the ways I always look at the new creative economy is just a way to connect seamlessly globally. In Web 2 space, it was very clunky to really connect to a global economy and global ecosystem, where in the new creative economy, we offer new methodologies of connecting to folks anywhere around the world at any time, at any point, and creating that seamless environment and doing it all through a digital space, which is pretty phenomenal. So it's similar to Upland, taking some physical addresses and items and bringing it to the digital world, same as with us with physical art, and connecting it to the digital world and just enhancing your new customer base or client base, to say the least.
Definitely. Michael, what are your
So
thoughts?
I agree with that. I think the big interesting thing about the space is that you're able to go cross borders in a way that, if people, they can use ETH or some other token that essentially doesn't have to be transacted or changed in a certain way. So that opens up your market to a much wider audience. I think that's just to add on to what you were saying.
Yeah, so definitely a lot about openness, about, I think true ownership is a big one, and just inviting more people to be a part of the process, I think is what this is all about. They say like Web 2 is a lot like read, write, Web 3 is read, write, own, right? So this is about providing value back to the community in a sense and to the creators, and having, giving the creators the ability to have more longevity in their projects and a little bit more control over what they actually do, which I think is really a pretty amazing and transformative thing for the digital space.
Yeah, and I think that's what really adds a lot, right? Like, because you could do digital kind of downloads before, but what really makes a difference is that tokenization, the monetization that you can get. So the value, because you can't really sell a skin you buy on Fortnite, but you can sell these products you actually own it. And I think that's really the biggest, kind of change.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk a little bit more, at least I'll talk a little bit more about gaming and stuff in a little bit, but I think you're right on. I think the gaming is one of the most fascinating applications for this new creative economy for creators. So, question for the audience, by a show of hands. Oh, hey, we have Giovanna here. Please welcome Giovanna from Decentraland.
Hello, everyone. Finally. Thank you.
She rushed over here as fast as she could.
It's from the airport. My bag is over there. Sorry.
She can thank LAX for her being late. So go ahead and introduce yourself before we get to the next section.
Okay, so I'm Giovanna. I go by Gigi in this ecosystem, so you can call me Gigi. I am a lead producer at the Decentraland Foundation. And I work mostly in producing events with our content team and working with the creators community. So that's a very good topic for us to talk today.
Beautiful. Can't wait. So we've been talking a little bit about the new creative economy. Maybe we can take a step back. To you, what does the new creative economy mean to you?
Well, I think it means giving opportunity to new minds, new voices to speak, and also first to review how the revenue share happens.
Absolutely.
So I think those are important points, that we really make it more horizontal, and I think co-creation is essential. Co-creation between creators and brands also.
Absolutely. Definitely agree. So question for the audience, how many of you guys would consider yourself content creators right now? It's definitely a few people, and how many of you guys have actually created content or distributed content in the Web3 space? Really only a couple of you guys. All right, so we got a lot of newbies, which is perfect. So my next question is, what does success look like for creators and brands in Web3? How can they translate, basically what are the new KPIs in a sense? What are they looking for in this space? Alex, we'll start with you.
So one of the things I always say is, one, it's a good way to build trust, and really create a new audience, a new community. I would say one of the best ways to measure KPIs in the new creative economy is growth of your community. That's one of the single most, especially if you're a brand, but if you're an individual creator, it's a way to really help expand on your current community and what you're currently doing. You take a look at the current system and the way it's set up, it's very much set up for the platforms to succeed off of your success. Now we're taking that and we're spinning it around, and you're succeeding off of your success. So it's one of the key ways I think you could measure it is, one, the growth of your community, monetizing that growth of your own based community, whether you're a brand or an individual. And thirdly is how to create a trust system within that community and seeing how many folks actually stay on board, how many new people you add, and what is the clientele that you're retaining. So I think those are some of the key ways to measure it and how to look at it, especially in both sides of the scope, whether you're a brand or an individual going into it.
Absolutely. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, just kind of touching on that, is it's very real time, right? Like, so as things change, as the market sells or buys or prices go up, you can see that right away, right on the blockchain. And I think that's a big deal compared to previous, platforms, because otherwise you'd have to tie in a lot of different, kind of systems. And I think especially as a creative person starting out, it's kind of just there, right? So a lot of tooling's there that you can actually leverage. So I think that's an interesting part of the space too.
Definitely. Giovanna, your thoughts?
Okay, I think that I'm very much aligned with what Alex said and with all of you said, but I think Definitely community is important. I think we see creators being recognized by their peers. I think that's very relevant. But also I think when you start seeing creators creating educational content, passing the knowledge, that is a sign that you succeeded and then you are making an impact. So I think looking at the long term, setting up new rules. So definitely I think this is relevant for me.
Absolutely, and I think the emphasis on community is so huge in this space. It's not that people are just going to produce content and it's going to be bought instantly, right? I think some people have a preconceived notion that if they make NFT, people will buy an NFT. And that's not really how it works. You have to foster it. You have to build your community around it and create value and provide value back to that community. Something that's sorely missing in our current creative economy, quote unquote, is that when you purchase something from a producer, that's it. That's the end of it, right? There's no value that they get back out of that. A lot of times there's no resale value. So having the opportunity to actually provide value for your community and foster that community, I think, is critically important to be successful in this space.
Definitely, adding utility, and you can do that post, so you can actually promise certain things and then keep adding value over time through utility. And as you do like different partnerships, or you build out. It depends what you're talking about. If you're a smaller creator or a larger creator, obviously, but right. As you grow in the space, then that opportunity is there for you to scale. In my opinion.
100%.
Yeah, it's so critical to give something to that end user. And to their point, I think that gets looked over so much. A lot of folks believe with our new space is I create content, I put it out there, whether it's art, whether it's video, no matter what it is, I put it out there, I'm gonna make money. But then what happens to your community? And that's why one of the things I mentioned is how are you retaining that community and how are you growing it over time? And that's one of the key measurements of success when you really dig in and look at it is what are you doing to give value to that end user? So if I'm buying that NFT, if I'm buying that piece of art, what is it for me as an end user that's of value, and how do I continue to earn that value?
Absolutely. Anything else to add?
I just wanted to add that I think that's where creators are showing even to brands how to succeed, because we see a lot of brands that are very, very much celebrated, and just dropping an NFT is not any assurance of success. So I think that's why community, a meaning behind it, so relevant today.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a big mistake that brands are making right now is like, hey, we have an audience, we have a lot of brand stuff.
NFT.
Yeah, hey, here's an NFT. People will buy it.
Let's drop.
Exactly, no. But that's not really how it works. Is people in this space, people who are, the audience that's going to buy it, want that value. They want to be a part of the process. So I think that's really important. So I'm going to move on to my next question, and what do you guys think is some of the biggest challenges that creators and brands are facing right now? Obviously, we kind of just touched on one, but let's get it off with you, Giovanna. What do you think?
Well, I think for creators today, of course, they have to understand how this business model will exist and how they will be able to operate with the Web2 community, right? So I think right now there are two things I always look at. One is how we can actually expand NFTs functionalities from collectibles to real bridges between physical and digital. I think that will also trigger lots of possibilities for creators. But then understanding how they can absorb some cool elements from Web 2 into Web 3.
Absolutely.
And I think really change the system. I'm a big believer that right now we build tools together, not just content together.
Absolutely.
So they are builders in every sense. So I think figure out that business model may be a challenge, but we're going to get there.
Definitely. Michael, what do you think?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues is that friction point you just pointed, right? Like, so when you look at Web3 and people having to use decentralized type wallets, for example, but it's so core to the business, right? Like that's what gives it value at the same time. So on-ramping, there's a lot of products out there that you can use to help on-ramp, individuals into that space. But at the same time, you don't want to become too Web 2, right? Like because a lot of that ramping up, requires you to become more centralized. So it's a balance for sure.
Totally. Alex, your thoughts, challenges?
So definitely love what they're saying. It is finding that balance because it's learning how to speak two languages and converting them and converging them into one, essentially. So the Web3 space already understands the space. So when you're speaking with those customers, they're already there, they already understand. But if you're bringing Web 2 into Web 3, it's how do you merge those two philosophies and ideologies? How do you make it seamless? That's one of the most critical things, and I think one of the most frustrating things that is being found right now is how do you create that seamless interaction and that seamless experience to really enter into the space and become part of the new creative ecosystem?
Absolutely, and I really agree with what you're touching on with regards to like finding the middle ground, because I think right now it's really difficult. There's a lot of different perceptions around what NFTs are and why they're important, and a lot of people don't get it, and we know that. But gamers in particular, I think, are one fascinating example of this, where like they really hate NFTs, and I really don't know why. Like this is something that baffles me to my core.
It's an additional cost, like a digital download, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
It's like it's just all they see is the money point, but they're already spending tons of money, right?
But because they don't see the other side of it, they don't see the monetization they can get on the back end.
Right. They don't see the ownership, and I think like part of what we need to do is start to think about a way to position this in a way where NFT is the core of how it works, but that's not necessarily the marketing speak. They're not buying it because it's an NFT, they're buying it because it's valuable to them, and then by proxy, they have access to this open marketplace.
Yeah, I do like to see NFTs as really this key that opens opportunities for you to be part of a community. Honestly, the NFTs I buy, they generally are a key, an open door to an in real life community, And I think that's what we should looking into more and more. Of course, there is the collectible side of it, but sometimes we get lost in only that asset value and not the people value behind the NFT. And I think that's what really make it strong, if you have people behind.
I think right now NFTs invite a lot of speculation, so a lot of collectors too they're just speculators, right? What we really need to do is start working towards a future where NFTs are integrated as a part of these ecosystems, as these worlds, and you don't necessarily need to know that they're NFTs. You're getting value out of the experience, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the neat things, I was just interacting with the project about a month and a half ago. Shiba, they manufacture cat food, and they're entering the Web3 space by regenerating coral reefs, and so they're creating this entire coral reef ecosystem in the metaverse. But each NFT represents physical corals that they're going to regenerate in the real world. And a lot of times we're hearing the word refi and regenerative finance, and what does it mean? And again, I always ask, what does it mean to the end user? Well, if I'm really passionate about our oceans and our ecosystem, that's something I'm going to back. That's something I'm going to definitely get behind. Or if I'm seeing an artist that's creating a regenerative village in Peru and his photographs have that real world impact, well, I'm not just getting a photograph, I'm actually part of this community that's helping preserve culture and heritage and creating a regenerative village out in Peru, which for me, I look at that and I'm saying, oh, that's a no-brainer, I'll get behind that. But as creators and as brands, it's how do you do that? How do you actually leverage that? So I think that's the struggle.
Definitely. Anything else to add, Michael?
No, I was just thinking about what you were saying. At first, I thought you were going to talk about Shiba Inu, but but maybe they should. It's a top 15 token, so maybe there's something there, right? But
it's possible.
But yeah, I think if you can expand beyond the digital world and make it so it's this like omniverse or all around 360 kind of thing, I think that's definitely the goal, because especially if you're doing good, right? Like there's a couple projects that I think they give X percentage for a tree. I think it's Treeverse maybe does 1 tree for every NFT you bought. So there's a lot of that happening. I think it's a good trend. So.
Yeah, I think things will start to change over time, and accessibility, I think, is also a big challenge here, right? It's like, how do we get people into these ecosystems? One thing that Upland has focused on is being a mobile-first platform, which I think a lot of NFT projects aren't doing right now, but it has allowed us to attract a lot more users who are not otherwise native to the NFT space. I think like 65% of our players don't own NFTs outside of Upland. So, thinking of ways that we can continue to build on top of that as a space as a whole and provide those on-ramps, those off-ramps, and get people into those ecosystems without high barriers to entry, without high cost, I think is going to be really important for any brand or creator that's trying to enter this space.
Agree.
All right. Next question?
Yeah.
All right. So my next question is, it's about monetization. I think something that Web3 brings is new mechanisms for monetization. Things that didn't necessarily exist in the past. You're not necessarily, bound to a particular platform or ecosystem. So, what are some of those pathways for monetization that brands and creators can, leverage, and what makes them valuable? We'll start with Michael this time.
Well, I mean, most recently, if you're doing NFT drops, there's been a trend to do free NFT drops, but they make money off the royalties, right? So royalties is a big one, and that keeps going, and the value goes up. So that just kind of compounds and scales. And I think if you're new to the space and you're just starting out, that's the good option, to just put it out there and get a community kind of around your product. I think that's an interesting way to just start off.
Yeah, definitely. Gigi.
I think thinking on the reality of the central and community, I think a lot of our creators, they have their own lines of wearables, for example, but they offer a lot of service to brands. So I think one of the major revenues today is like building in 3D or even the land lease. So I think those are today the main revenue stream for them. But I do see, of course, a lot of their creations slowly be more mainstream, and I think that will become their main revenue in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Alex, your thoughts?
So, you know, there's so many different ways to monetize everything we do and content we put out. And the neat thing about this is the options are yours and the options are endless. And that's one of the amazing things that is being created in this new creative ecosystem. The one thing I always say is there's no value that could ever be put on a strong, solid community. So I think the biggest monetization that we could all formulate and discuss is how to create that community, how to sustain the community, and how to continue the engagement of that community, because that's where your monetization comes in, right? So, you know, coming from the traditional product world, it's so easy to create products and put products out there, have great marketing, but at the end of the day, we're humans, we're people, right? And so we're all interacted and intertwined with one another. It's how we reach those communities, how we engage them and keep them passionate about what you're doing. That's where the mainstream of revenues and monetization is going to come in. Now, granted, as Giovanna said, one of the key things is how do you tap into other aspects of it? How do you tap into brands, partnerships, and build those relationships? But it then all circles right back to that first one, is that community, right? So the number one form of monetization is building that strong, solid community. And from there, the options are endless for you as a creator to own that.
Definitely, and you definitely want to build that community that is going to see the value in your project, who are going to be the ones who, you know, are generating revenue for you. I think, you know, something that is really fascinating from a gaming perspective is like this idea of interoperability with your assets. You know, there's value beyond, right? So we want to create utility around these things, and I think utility is a really core concept that most brands and creators should consider when they're dropping NFTs. It's like, okay, well, you know, this might be a really cool piece of art, but what is the utility beyond that? How is that going to continue providing value to the community? So I think thinking along those terms is going to be very beneficial for any brand and creator, and I think that also just trying to contextualize it in that format where you're thinking long term, right? It's not necessarily just about your initial sale, your first drop. It's what is going to happen after. So you'll see a lot of NFT projects, you know, kind of focus on the royalty side. Like you mentioned, free NFT drops, but they're going to make royalties off that back, you know, those future sales and stuff. So, you know, it really is kind of a dynamic shift from what we're used to, which I think is going to be really fascinating to see how it plays out.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think another part of that is that token gating side. So once you build out your community, you can keep scaling that, you know, as a utility. So that's a big thing that I think starting out in this community you should look into.
Absolutely. Anything else to add? All right, we can move on. So how, you know, we've talked a lot about community, but how do you drive engagement in this space? How do you get people to actually be a part of your ecosystem, your brand, your community? What are the best ways for creators and brands to do that? We'll start with Giovanna.
Okay, let's start. Well, I think it depends a lot first if you are a creator that belongs already to a community, because sometimes that's what we see. There is a district or community that grows, and then you have a creator that already have a sense of belonging in that space.
Right.
But I think sense of belonging is one of the things I feel is super important. If you want to keep the engagement, the retention, you need to make that user feel part of that. So for brands, I would say that co-creation is key, transparency is key. I think listening to what others are doing, what they want to be part, what they want to do, it's very important. And communities already do that. So I think sense of belonging, it's super key for that to happen.
Absolutely, I think that's a huge one. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Such a huge concept of it. Another part of it is you know, be transparent, be clear, and have something tied to it that draws passion and emotions. I think that gets lost a lot. So there's a lot of creatives and creators that they create some beautiful pieces or they have some great content, but it doesn't draw on human emotion. It doesn't draw on passion, where people are not that connected to it. So there's a disconnect and there's a separation then at that point. So find ways to draw on emotions and passion, but make it something that's real, right? Because again, the term "we could see past the bullshit," it's very real, right? So don't put things out there that, you know, you're just trying to put a dollar bill on it, but put something out there that's real, that's authentic, that's valuable to you, and then tie it to others' emotions and others' passions and bring it to it. Like Giovanna said, it's so critical. Get the engagement from your community. Allow them to speak. The worst thing to do is have a silent community. Once your community is silent, you have no community. So it's that simple.
Definitely agree, Michael.
No, I think authenticity is really important because it's such a transparent space. So once people see that there's something unauthentic, you can literally see like the interest going down, like right away. So having that, like putting out a product that you're really behind, that you really think is the best product you put out, is really important. And I think the community sees that right off, because people are engaging online on all the social channels. And it's just really quick. I mean, there's been a couple projects I'm not going to mention, but there were a couple things that did really well. Their projects were, but once it came out that they had done a couple pump and dump projects, it just killed it.
Yep.
Everyone finds out.
Yeah, true. It is super interesting. I think like sense of belonging is definitely really important to getting people to want to engage, right? To want to actually speak. But having a transparent ecosystem and giving them a platform to do that is equally as important, right? Mm-hmm. There needs to be a mechanism for them to actually speak their voice, to communicate with the broader community and whatever the team is, whoever the creator is. I think something that's interesting that's happened in Upland is like we have this unique tie to the real world where all the addresses in our metaverse are based on the real world. And what we've seen is that people that buy property in a specific neighborhood, they will create node communities out of those neighborhoods because they all have this shared interest of living in that neighborhood. So I think any way that you can draw on that, you can speak to their desires. What are they looking for? What are they looking to get value out of? And try and build around that. I think you're going to have a lot of long-term success in that case. And you'll drive a lot of engagement with your community for sure.
Can I add one thought? Actually, two. So one, I do see a lot, for example, communities doing parties, throwing parties, right, where they have fun, where they meet their friends. So I think that that's a very valuable thing for me in an NFT community, that they have that place for self-expression, which is super important. Now, I have a concern, like I see a lot of times the discussion of DAOs and even communities being objectified and productized. I don't want to see that, I recently did a post even saying that DAOs are not licenses, And I think that's one thing we have to be very careful, even for brands and creators that want to be popular, but sometimes they just lose the value trying to make the DAO or the community, even if it is not a DAO, but a community a product.
Yeah.
We should not make people a product.
That's true.
And I think that's super important, at least for me.
No, I agree. And I think DAOs are something that I think every NFT, not every NFT, but a lot of them are like shifting towards this DAO-focused approach, and it's not always the best thing. It really depends on the context. Like, what are you trying to achieve with your DAO? Just because you have a lot of people who own NFTs in your ecosystem does not mean that you need a DAO, right?
Exactly.
So true. And whether you're a brand or an individual that's looking to create, remember what you're creating is what's of value, right? And so attach it to that. You don't need to attach it to a DAO. Back to the point, if it's viable, then absolutely, right? If it's something that draws passion and emotion and is part of your quote unquote roadmap, then absolutely, right? But if that's not what you're looking at, if what you're looking at is creating content, creating art, selling land, whatever it may be, that's your focus, right? That's what you got to be about. And then when you start talking a different language, you're going to lose those original folks. And then to Giovanna's point, then you're basically, I hate saying it, but you're objectifying people instead of, communicating and building a community of people. So.
Unless you're really going to decentralize your whole project, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that if you are really decentralized and that's the core value of the whole thing you're building, absolutely. But sometimes it's just the cherry on top, because it is
just
a hype word.
Right. I mean, some DAOs are pretty vapid, for lack of a better term. It's just the DAO for the sake of a DAO. So that's
We're creating a DAO.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
go.
Not a great reason. Anything else to add on this one, guys?
Oh, good.
All right. So my next question is about the role that community plays in the value creation process. And I think this is something that is a little bit overlooked because you always think of it from this perspective of creator to consumer, creator to community. But how can the community be a part of that value creation process? What are your thoughts, Alex?
I would say it's a double-edged sword, right? Because, I always, And coming from the traditional retail space and the traditional space, one of the things we always share is you're not going to satisfy absolutely everyone. That is physically impossible. So stick to what you're creating, stick to what you're building, build what you're passionate about, but draw on your community and what they love and what they want, right? But be an ear to listen, right? Allow them to speak, allow them to communicate. Doesn't mean that, oh, I completely disagree with you. No, I'm shutting you off, right? Get off my Discord, right? But what it basically means is that's a great idea. I love your thought process. Would be great if you maybe brought that to the community, right? And leverage that thought, that thinking to spark other creatives. And I think someone said it earlier, I think it was you, Giovanna, where you said the true sign of success is when you're now the educator. And I think that's one of the key components, right? So allow your success to be the driving force of others to come into your space, give advice, but then turn it back and allow them to be the creative of that advice, right? Stick to what you're building, stick to who you are, but still allow community engagement and allow that driving force. Because it is going to build on what you're doing so much more. It's going to exemplify that brand so much more. So that's just my thoughts there.
Michael.
Yeah, so in a sense, we're all building platforms, right? Even if you're doing a basic like NFT project. And the community is definitely going to help drive in that direction. And if you're open to that, I think that'll be mutual success, because I think that's one of the biggest changes, right? Like that you're able to get that real time kind of feedback from the community, and you can incorporate that as you roll out your roadmap, or depending on how large your project is, right? Like,
Of course. Giovanna, your thoughts?
My thoughts. So I do think that when you think about how the community can participate, it's about the dialogue, right? We are coming from the Web 2, where we are in a monologue with a few comments below our videos or our photos. And now we're talking about really iterating and is interactive with others. So I do feel that it's all about politics. We as political beings, not politics the way we know, but as the core of we being political. We like to debate, we like to present ideas, to think together. So I think that's also a rebirth of politics in a beautiful way. And that is the key for the community to participate.
Definitely, creating that dialogue with the community, allowing them to be a part of the process is super important in my mind. I think one other aspect of this that is super fascinating to me as well is like the actual technical, capabilities of what NFTs and this whole ecosystem provides. Actually having the ability to potentially have like micro access to brands, or allowing your creators, your community to leverage your IP to create new existing things. And I think that is a really fascinating deviation from what we currently have. Like you said, it's a monologue. It's we produce the content, you consume the content. Now it can be we produce the content alongside you, and then we engage in it together, which I think is a really beautiful thing. So I'm excited to see that. Anything else to add on this one, guys?
No, I think that was beautiful.
Thank you. So last question is just what qualities of Web3 really make it ideal for brands and creators? What is going to tell the corporate world to say, okay, leave what you do now, come make NFTs, or come be in the Web3 space? How does that work? Michael, we'll start with you.
I mean, I think looking at, again, going back to the ability to offer like that monetization, being able, you touched on interoperability earlier. I mean, there's definitely some challenges around that still, but I think being able to grow across these different communities, is something that's really appealing. It's a global thing. Like there's definitely different, niche groups that you can tie in under this whole Web3 thing, because there's definitely like certain characteristics around the NFT environment or the metaverse that cuts across a lot of different people. So I think that gives you a whole new group of potential customers essentially.
Absolutely. Giovanna.
Well, I think that NFTs, they help brands in a way to like strengthen the story, the narrative behind everything they do. So it's not just about NFTs, they are complementary to their story there in general. But also too, they will be very soon very functional keys that will unlock the metaverse, as we say, a way to bring the metaverse outside the screens for brands. If they do a metaverse activation, will be NFT somehow. So I would be looking to that angle if I'm a brand.
Definitely. Alex, what are your thoughts?
So to add to just what Giovanna said, and I couldn't agree more, it's an enhancement to what you're already doing. I would never say leave the Web 2 space to go into the Web 3 space. Instead, I would argue, leverage the technology that's there to enhance what you're currently doing. It opens up so much doors and avenues, and it gives the ability to connect the physical to the digital and digital to physical in both ways, which is such an incredible thing. And for the first time, we're really beginning to see that. And it was an incredible thing as I was going through booth by booth by booth. You have a lot of these metaverse projects that are bringing things into the real world, whether it's events or, like Giovanni said, they're keys, right? They're giving you access to some incredible incentives, and they're incentivizing and building that value and leveraging that technology to do that. But conversely is folks are taking their physical items and their claymation and a few other projects that were there. They're taking their physical items and they're bringing them into the metaverse. They're bringing them into a digital world and tokenizing that physical item, but it's still real, it's still tangible, it's still yours. And there's that real sense of ownership. So one of the things I always say is, real authentication, real art, right? And that's one of the beauties of the leveraging the Web3 technology. So
Definitely, and on the true ownership front, I think this is something that can really appeal to consumers as this space grows, as things start to become more normalized. Because right now, again, you have this relationship. It's consumer to brand, and that's it. That's the end of it, right? So what happens when there's an alternative? When brands start to actually say, okay, well, we want the community to be a part of the process. Now there's just a better feeling, right? More people are going to be attracted to that. I think something that's really fascinating also is just like the openness of all of this, right? Is the interoperability of assets, the ability to make use of these assets beyond their original intention. Something that I really like to lean on is like this example. I grew up, I'm a huge gamer, I grew up playing a lot of different games, but Warcraft 3 was a big one for me. And they had this awesome map editing tool that basically birthed a whole bunch of other game types outside of their original intention, right? So they had the core game, but then they had all the community built experiences. And one of those games, Dota, ended up becoming one of the world's biggest gaming genres, and League of Legends the biggest game in the world today. So what happens when you just maximize this? You just enhance it. You just bring this to basically every ecosystem, to every brand and creator. What can the community do with that ecosystem, with that world, right? You've seen it in Skyrim, you've seen it in Grand Theft Auto. So I think that aspect is going to be really fascinating, and I think that is a tremendous value that really can't be found anywhere else as of right now.
So true.
Anything else?
That's the last question.
That's the last question. I was going to ask if you guys had any questions.
Because I have an invitation, just wanted to add one thing. Because we're talking about NFTs, I'm helping to organize the Art Week in the Central Land, in which we're going to have many NFT projects. So we're trying to create art installation from NFTs. And I think that's an interesting way for us to see how we actually can unframe some of those pieces and think about storytelling. So I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely. Anything else you guys want to add?
I think we're good.
Good?
Good.
Any questions from you guys? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, there we got a question back
Right behind. Yep.
Hi. Now my company is helping some celebrity to build their own NFT community. And so I have two questions for you guys. The first one is that what do you guys think of the Boring Ape, the successful of the Boring Ape? And how can other projects to learn or copy from their business model or some part? Sure. And the second question is, now because a lot of the international big company is trying to build their own NFT product or some community, and compared with their own product successful, the NFT community is not as good as what they expect. And so what part should they improve in their NFT product building? So that's my two questions. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Anybody want to start?
Yeah, on that last part, I think the one word is authenticity, right? Like, I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Because it's really easy for them to, I was at Comic-Con and they were handing out, hey, here's an NFT, scan the QR, but nobody cared because there was nothing there.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the point we made earlier, where if you're a brand and you already exist and you're a successful brand, it doesn't mean, hey, we're launching an NFT, that's going to be successful, right? So it comes down to building that community, building the trust, educating, and then bringing them all together. I think that's, and you mentioned Bored Apes, right? I think if we had to do marketing 101, I would say they really cornered that and really focus on how do you leverage community, how do you build it, and how do you continue to keep them engaged throughout the process. There's always going to be dips and mountains and valleys, like I call them. But through those mountains and valleys, how do you keep everyone engaged? And they've done such a phenomenal job. So from a marketing standpoint, from a community standpoint, I would say that's marketing 101 is keeping that. And then to your second question, right? I think we see that with a lot of big brands, why they're like, oh, well, Web3 NFTs, we don't believe in it because we launched an NFT and sold nothing. Well, of course, just because you have a name doesn't mean it's gonna work. You have to build it, right? Just like you built your company, so.
Definitely. Giovanna?
My comment is going to be mostly that I think if a celebrity is doing an NFT drop, should not be about her or him.
Yeah.
Should be about the actual community.
Definitely.
Because we are so used to look at ourselves about selfies, right? The Web2. So I don't think that's the right approach.
That's right.
So that's how I would definitely would approach. And the second thing is, don't scan QR codes
Definitely not.
in events.
Good call.
That's a good call, yeah. Just to add, I think the Bored Ape example is interesting. I think they've done some unique things with like kind of IP ownership. It's like, hey, you own the ape, you can do whatever you want with it. I think from that perspective, it is fascinating. But at the end of the day, if you're not engaging the community, if you're not building that process and building that dialogue, you're not going to have the same level of success.
That's right.
Next question.
So,
We got it right here.
Yeah.
what would you say? You've talked a lot about building community and that being an essential component. So, what are the 3 core fundamentals of building a community? Like, how do we get that done? Like, what do we focus on to build a strong community that can be sustained?
Who wants to start?
That's an awesome question. What I've seen success and stories of success, and one of the things I tell everyone every time I speak to them to focus on is focus on the product, right? So what are you creating and what are you launching? What are you building? Focus on your mission and focus on values, right? And I think you've heard Giovanna mention it a few times. Create something that will align and attach to something that gives you keys or access or create further engagement. But I think the most critical part and interesting part is, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is listen, right? So doesn't mean you have to agree with everything your community tells you, but listen to your community, allow them to speak, allow them to have an actual outlet and be part of the building process. Because I think those are some of the critical parts of it. And we see it so many times in the NFT space where a project will come out, and I think we just mentioned it right now with the celebrity. If you make it about the celebrity instead of the product and the mission and what you're building, cool. Drake is dropping an NFT. Snoop Dogg is dropping an NFT. Fantastic. But what is it? Why do I want to be a part of it? Why should I be in that community? And I think that's the keys. And I guess others, if you want to.
Yeah, value and engagement, right? I think those are the keys. And people, they tend to want to know that project's going to last. So if they put time and effort into it, they don't want it to be just like, hey, I just did a drop and that's it and I'm gone. Like they want to see that that's an ongoing, kind of building kind of thing.
Definitely.
I
Giovanna?
think if you have a strong roadmap, a transparent roadmap, clear strategy, because it's easy to do an NFT. You go now and you just create yours, right? Yep. So you need to have a reason to be there, and you need to have a clear roadmap. I think that gives people the security they need that, okay, I'm going to engage. So
definitely.
Maybe they're not 3, the ones I mentioned, just 2.
I don't know if I have 3, but definitely I think, providing value back to the community is a huge one. Engaging the community is a massive one, in my opinion. Giving them a platform for them to speak their mind, right? You're inviting people to be a part of potentially developing a product or an ecosystem. So if they're going to invest funds in order to be a part of that process, you definitely want to make sure that you're actually talking to them. And then, like you said, that level of transparency, making sure that you are being clear about your intentions from a project. There's nothing worse than buying an NFT. And, I've seen this happen lots of times where they think they're buying into something that they don't really understand at all, and it turns out to be something completely different, or they get rug pulled or something like that. So making sure that you're stating your intentions beforehand and actually providing that value, I think, is going to be really important. So I think we have time for one more question.
Thanks, everyone. So I'm an IP attorney, and my client is a huge artist with 2,000 paintings. He needs probably I would say 10 acres of digital land, and we're in the process of making a decision on what which one of these metaverse digital wars to invest in. So how do you deal with compatibility issue? So let's say, we mint a painting on Ethereum. Mm-hmm. Will that NFT be usable in different metaverses, or how you go with that and make that compatibility issue like.
Sure. Giovanna, you want
Can
to
I start?
Yeah,
I really want to start because today I was just receiving an email about that. I was replying on the cab. So what I can tell in terms of experience that I had in Decentraland is right now we don't have interoperability 100%. We have different chains. We have NFTs being minted in different chains. But in the 3D space, like in the Web3 spatial web, you can represent those NFTs somehow. So for example, we try to create linked wearables that allow you to connect a wearable inside that world with an external NFT, or sometimes you just do a basic external link that allow you to represent that installation in 3D, but then take the person to the project. My point is, I think right now, we do have a lot of limitations technically, but in my opinion, interoperability doesn't start in the tech. It starts in our mindset. You can create bridges today with external links to anywhere you want, from any website you want. And I think that's the strategy we are using if we cannot be in the same chain or if NFTs are not compatible.
Yeah, I mean, the compatibility question is definitely a big challenge, and there aren't any perfect universal interoperability standards yet. That may change over time, but like you said, there is an opportunity for representation in really almost every ecosystem. From Upland's perspective, we are building an NFT bridge that will allow you to port in any assets from pretty much any blockchain, but how those assets are represented in the game, still TBD, right? We still have to kind of think about some of those things. Of course, there's kind of two components of that. There is the interoperability of ownership, which is really what the token is, right? It's not necessarily data. You're not buying a 3D object in the sense of data. You're buying the token that shows that you own that. So if your data is stored on maybe IPFS or Arweave or whatever decentrally, there's probably a better opportunity that you can bring those things into other ecosystems, but you kind of have to separate those things out and then start to think about them from that perspective, and then I think you'll arrive at a better solution.
Yeah, I would say like Ethereum, the good thing about it is that it's the liquidity is really high, right? But then there's the gas costs, and I'm sure you guys have heard of that. But what's great about it is that it's EVM compatible, or other people are EVM compatible to it, so it opens you up to a lot of the top chains, actually.
Yep.
But I mean, somebody could take that art and just put it on a different chain, right? So you almost want to brand what you're putting out based on a chain, in my opinion, because if it's artwork, I mean, I could go and grab it and just put it on a different chain and be like, that's the real artwork, right? Like, so there's definitely some things to think about around that, in my opinion.
Alex, anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing is, like, there's no perfect technology out there yet, but it's getting there. And as you mentioned, there's bridging. And with Ethereum, you could get into any EVM compatible, find the bridge, and have the capacity and capability of bridging from one chain to another. So that's right now the best solution, but there's other solutions that are coming out that are pretty exciting. So
Definitely. Yeah. All right, anything else to add, you guys?
we're done, right?
All right, awesome. Well, I think that's it for us. My name is Matt. I'm from Upland. Thank you guys all much. Giovanna from Decentraland, Alex from RVSwap, and Michael from Silks.
And
awesome.
yeah, if you guys have any more questions, we're at 341 if you guys want to chat.
Yeah, I was going to say, first off, give them a round of applause. What a great panel. Lot to unpack there. That was amazing. But make sure that you guys announce whatever your booth number is, because some people in the crowd do want to come and talk to you. So just let them know where they can find you on the floor.
Sure. We don't have a booth, but I'll be around here.
I would do my registration, so if you want to find me.
Yeah, we don't have a booth either, but you could find me on social. It's AlexRealNFT. So find me on any social, and I'll be around. So thank you.
Awesome,
Thank
guys.
you.
Wanted to pose for a picture really quick at the front of the
Sure.
stage, and then we're going to bring up another group to do that. Thank you, guys. Give them another round of applause. That was great. Would love to interview every one of you for our YouTube channel, so I'm going to get your information. Just in case anybody wants to get one, I'll get one from you. All right. Nice job. Do you have a camera that you want me to take it with? Or do you want me to just take it with mine?